Because random weekend texts, TJ starts firing them off to me.
Oh, that's right.
He just started, what's going on with your boys? Oh, boy. Not looking good.
I said they look dangerous.
More like Shardy. Okay.
Thanks, Rico. I said they look dangerous. Rico said dangerously bad. So
Yes.
I didn't say anything bad. You did.
So, look, we brought this up. We all watched. My response to it is I can't make a demand that this guy retires. I just know as someone who watches the sport, I've normalized injuries, part of the game. On average, 6 players get hurt per game, every game per week in the NFL. It's that I don't want to see him anymore. When it's the same guy with the same injury, and it's a brain injury, and it's the same. TJ, it happened last night. I go, get this guy out of this game and get him into a different career.
Yeah.
I want to know where you're
scary.
At. That's my point.
It is. It's starting to get scary, and it's happening quite frequently, right? I mean, almost every single year he's going through this.
4 in under 2 years.
And it's not.
Last year he escaped, any concussion. He played relatively healthy.
Yeah, and you look at around the league, I mean, there's a bunch of guys right now that are, limited in practice with concussions. Maybe things pop up, on Monday or Tuesday after a game, but when you watch it live and you see the reaction and you see how scary it is, I mean, you're going to draw a bigger reaction from people watching. It's scary, man. It is. And I went through a bunch of concussions. I mean, I think probably 5 or 6 documented and maybe a handful other ones where I was just like, I'll just see how I feel tomorrow, right? I don't want to go say anything because I know automatically, it's a 5-day process once you're in the protocol. And so there's part of that where, not a lot of people got to see, maybe some happened in practice, but they're scary. And ultimately that's what made me walk away from the game. My last year I had a couple. I had one against Dallas.
In Minnesota.
So the Minnesota one was the last game I played in. It started off as a neck injury. And then as we progressed throughout the next couple weeks, I started feeling it was something more. And that one was scary because it was maybe 3 weeks after I had the one in Dallas. And, spending time with physicians and neurologists and you start to learn more about brain injuries and the impact. I think the neurologist put it very simply for me where, if you're just getting punched in the arm and eventually you're going to get a Charlie horse and then, somebody might come up and just tap you, but it might hurt a lot, right? Because the more impacts you take, the harder it is for your brain to recover, just like a lot of other muscles. But I've had a ton of, not a ton, but I think every concussion is different, right? There's some where you might get diagnosed on a Sunday and you might come in Monday morning and say, okay, feel great, right? Like everything's calm, settled down. The lights aren't bothering me. Maybe give me another day. Okay, by Tuesday, yep, I'm good to go, right? And that was before, maybe my first couple of years before they instilled the protocol, right? I've had concussions where, it takes a week sometimes before you're feeling better. And unfortunately, the last one I had that really made me walk away from the game I was 10 years in. I kind of knew that I was at the end of my career anyways. I wasn't a young player, thankfully, that had to make that decision. But that one lasted probably a couple months. And I think for me, the scary part was my kids were old enough to start being concerned. I would come home and my family's like, they really started getting concerned. And that's what hit me the hardest is when my family started to get worried about me getting injured. Yeah. I really had to shift my priorities, it's tough. But a guy like Tua, man, he's a young player, right? And I think he is a really good player. But this is scary. You know what I mean? And just seeing the reactions there. And yesterday it didn't seem like a major impact, right? Head to head. I mean, he did get jolted a little bit, but I had a similar response my last year too, where we'd be in practice, and I remember you go block a linebacker, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, he just blew me up." And then you get in the meeting room, 2 hours later, and you look at it, and you're like, "No, it couldn't have been that play. Like I've made that block 1,000 times." And then you start thinking, "Oh my goodness, like the little impacts feel like explosions now." And I think that's what Tua's going through. I think every little impact that he's having now is having a major response when it comes to his brain. And it's scary. But he's, like I said, every concussion could be different. He could show up today and say, guys, yeah, it kind of threw me off, but you know what? I actually feel pretty good. I don't know how he's going to respond. And I'm not suggesting that.
So what's it like? Take us behind the curtain. because you went through this. Doctors, family members, like, what are the people saying who are around you? What did they tell you? Or did you just internalize all of this and come up with this decision all on your own?
I think it was a collective decision. And, going into I think I was in my second year with Detroit. Probably knew I wasn't coming back the next year. And I kind of knew, I always told myself, I don't want to be a guy that hangs on forever. And by the end of my career, I'm playing terrible. And I still felt like I was playing good, but I kind of knew going into training camp that probably going to be my last year. But once you have the concussions, and I think the first concussion against Dallas was kind of scary because the impact was major. I couldn't really remember anything right after. It was kind of wobbly, right? The balance was off. Probably 3-4 days later, started feeling better. So it was scary, don't get me wrong, but it's like, okay, I'm back to normal by Wednesday or Thursday of the same week. The scary part is when they happen consistently, maybe not back-to-back weeks, but you're, every 3 or 4 weeks, man, I got my bell rung. And then it gets to a point, shoot, do I want to say something? You know what I mean? If I say something, I'm out for another week and I'm letting the team down. But I think when it came to the brain injuries, and this has taken a long time, but there's no more toughness when it comes to brain injuries, right? If I mess a knee up or an ankle or a shoulder or a wrist, like, let's figure it out, right? I'll deal with that in the offseason. I'll get something fixed. But I think with all the information we have now when it comes to concussions and the brain injuries and potential down the road, you have to make an adult decision. You have to be smart. And I don't know. I heard John this morning talking about it. Hey, if it was me, I would keep playing, right? Like, you understand the risks. And even me to this day, 5 years retired now, there's nothing I would have changed about my career. I would have still done the same thing after concussions, or maybe not reporting some because I knew we had a big game the next week and I knew I had to play. Maybe I'd take it easy Wednesday and Thursday, but I know the team needs. But I think that with the more information we have now regarding traumatic brain injuries, I think that a lot of players are starting to be smart and just starting to make difficult decisions. I mean, I go back and I think, who was the linebacker that played? I think he was at Wisconsin.
Chris Borland,
right? And he was a linebacker, and he was a good player. And he walked away from the game very early. He wasn't an all-pro guy or anything, but he was early in his career.
Yeah, it was like second year, wasn't it?
And he made, I think it was. And he made the decision, I don't want to do this anymore. Luke Kuechly was a guy. I think career probably ended a couple years too early. He was still in his prime. So it is incredibly difficult because this is your profession, man. It's hard to walk away from, and it's hard to walk away from if it's not on your own terms. You know what I mean? So it's just,
and Mike, I'm sorry,
it's sticky.
I don't care.
It's just a sticky.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've already done 3 radio shows today. Please.
Did it make it easier because you had a Super Bowl ring?
No, I think what made it easier for me is that my kids were getting older, and my kids were starting to look at me and really be afraid every time I got hurt. I'd come home days where my knee's banged up, or I'm in a boot, mess my ankle up, or hey, I got to go get surgery on my shoulder. Like, that didn't worry me. But when it came to the brain stuff and the concussion stuff, I remember like laying in bed at like 4:00 in the afternoon, just a dark room, and my kids coming in, like looking at me like almost in tears, right? Because they were scared. That's what made it easier for me. And I think it also made it easier that I was 10 years in. And like I said, I kind of had a feeling that probably last year in my career, no matter what. So I think that made it easier for me. And I think that's what makes it harder on younger players because Tua has got his entire career ahead of him,
The question I have, Tej,
and he signed a big contract. So there's a lot of people relying on you. That stuff that weighs on you.
It does. Well, here's how it was explained to me this morning, talking to a couple of people, is if he goes to see a doctor or he gets multiple opinions and the doctors say, look, you are absolutely in danger if you continue to play. Our recommendation is for you to shut it down. If he then shuts it down, he gets the full injury guarantee on the contract, which is, I believe, $93 million. That is the injury guarantee.
Yeah.
So my question is, when you go and you see these neurologists, how forward are they about a hard recommendation of you should stop playing, or they say, look, this is my best advice, do what you want? Like, how does that work?
It's got to be a collective decision, I think. But going back to my time, I remember I saw the neurologist after the Dallas game, and I missed it the next week. Probably would have been ready to go, but just, cautionary, hey, let's give you another week. And after the first concussion, it was, listen, and we went through every step and explained it. And like the way I told you about a Charlie horse, right? Your brain is weak right now. You might feel good, but one little impact might cause another one. And that's the thing I think scares doctors and neurologists the most. When you start seeing them back to back and you start seeing, oh man, I barely got hit and the bell got rung, right? And I think that the first time was, hey, I recommend, listen, this has potential to cause another one, which then can cause further concern. But I'd never had a doctor tell me, you need to stop playing. You can't do this. You can't. It's your decision, but I'm just going to give you my professional advice. And there's potential it could keep happening, right? And if it does keep happening, then we got to start rethinking. And then when I went back, a month later after, I had the neck injury and then some symptoms a couple weeks after that, I think that was I think the doctor looked at me and said, okay, we had this conversation a month ago.
Yeah.
We got it. You got to talk to your family. We got to be smart.
It's why I wonder because Rico and I were talking about it, and I just brought up the idea of it'll be short-term IR. There's no scenario he clears a base protocol. He'll be out at least a month, but like Rico said it, and he's right. What the hell? The league can't withstand a PR hit of him going out there in 4 weeks and it happening
again. Yeah.
And so, is he, in your mind, just your opinion, is he done for the year? To where this will be handled in the offseason and there will be a decision made? There's no way he can play again this year, right?
I think you're right. And only because I think that the highlights and the impacts and the aftermath of his arm standing up and what do they call it, that fencing position are just they're horrifying, right? So I think every time that he takes the field, it's going to be in the back of everybody's mind, right? This guy takes one hit. My goodness, what's going to happen next? You know what I mean? I think that's got to be in the back of your mind. So hopefully, I don't know how much the NFL will control that, but hopefully the Dolphins, have the sense to kind of put and look, I'm not saying throw the season in. Obviously, Tua is a big part of that offense. That's a hard decision you got to make, but hopefully they look after the person, Tua, and not just the competitive aspect of he gives us a better chance to win. We got to go win these games, right? We got a good team. Hopefully they can put that to the side and give him at least some ample time. I don't know if it's the rest of the season, but I think it's at least short-term IR.
Yeah.
Just because you don't want him making decisions this week or even next week.
Dude,
you want to make sure you give somebody ample time to go do all the testing and talk to people and talk with your family and go through the options.
It's like Tua. I'll see you in November. That's the earliest you're coming back.
All right.
Simple.
If you guys have questions for TJ, you have opinions on Tua, you want to talk Lions, we're here for all of it. Really good stuff, TJ. 248-539-9797. We will get to the phones next. 97.1.